look, I know all the reasons like why we shouldn't or can't or like won't fuck. I'm like, but I want to though. You know, just kind of like left it open. I'm like, but I want to. So like, I was just waiting for people like, yeah, me too.
I mean, that's not terrible.
No.
And honestly, though,
that's
I
like a
think
very
it's
sweet and endearing way to go for some dick. You know? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Menage-A-Pod, the hysterical comedy podcast about sex, dating, and relationships. As always, I'm joined by my bestie, Jenna. What is up, buddy?
That's a nice one. That might actually be the nicest one you've ever said to me.
Yeah, slowly but surely. It's been a long ride, but you're kind of growing on me.
I'm wearing you down.
Like a
happens. Like just get in
fucking
there.
fungus.
I know. I just get in there.
In my crevices and just like kind of...
Sorry, it's my thing. Oh my God.
To get into people's crevices?
To just wear you down.
Man, podcast 101.
Sorry.
We're going to fire her.
He's going to be really annoying today, and I don't know why.
Because
He's had a rough morning.
Oh, the dog or me?
No. Those of you listening, I'm talking about Miles. He's being super, super, super needy today. The cleaning lady was here this morning, and she vacuums, so he does not like that, and he has been stuck to my hip ever since.
So
annoying.
Before you go too much into Miles and before we intro our fantastic guest for today, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about.
Am I in trouble?
Yeah, man.
What I do?
Well, I mean, I noticed on social media that you got a new headboard.
I did. Did you see it?
I just asked you about it.
I mean, like in there.
I did. I went and saw it. And guys, I swear to God, the first thing I thought of when I saw this thing was, yeah, she would have a headboard you could handcuff somebody to. That's like, I mean, it's the first thing I thought of. Knowing you the way I know you, Jenna.
Well, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. It actually didn't factor into my decision making. It was just a very happy accident.
It didn't factor into it?
It did not.
So,
I know. Shame on me. But here's the part that that you like wouldn't know.
Okay.
Is that the headboard doesn't anchor itself to anything. It's just a headboard, so it like didn't come with like a footboard, you know, like the whole thing.
Right.
So it's just leaning against the wall right now. That feels dangerous.
So
if you're even just gonna like bone, that's dangerous. But if you're gonna try to handcuff, I need to anchor that shit to a wall.
You do.
So if any of you guys out there know how to do it, because I tried to Google it.
Anchor it or bone?
Please, we know I'm good at one of those things.
Okay. All right.
The anchoring it, because the problem is it doesn't have a back to it. So there's no like, I don't know. They were all like those, tufted ones.
This is premium content right here.
I'm just saying. So if anyone out there, let me know, because it's not on the Googles.
Okay. All right, guys. If you know how to
if
anchor
you've
a bed
anchored your bed for
Jenna's
handcuffs, let me know.
To create just like a situation of absolute seduction in her bedroom, and she needs to be able to anchor this fucking bed frame.
Help me out.
Okay.
I need it.
Have you ever looked at TaskRabbit? You can like hire someone to do that really quickly.
I can.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is it an app?
Yeah.
Okay.
TaskRabbit, and someone will just come with tools, and they like know how to do everything. Yeah. And they've got little like profiles, like a dating profile, but it's like for handyman.
What if? Oh, that's not a bad idea. What if I get a hot handyman who also knows how to do my bed?
Too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're onto something. That's what I'm going to do. It'll become my new dating app. I do love a man who can like build things.
That's
stuff.
game changer.
That's hot.
It's like if you,
I might just get on there like it's my Tinder.
That's $1 million idea
I have
right
some
there.
stuff that can be hung. I'm like, I could totally.
What, you just trying to find one more thing that can be hung?
Yeah.
I figured. I know your style. Jenna's like, size queen.
I'm just like
what
knocking shit off the wall. I'm like, I don't know how that happened. I'm going to have you come back over.
That's awesome.
That would be me.
All right. Well, yeah, get that done. Get on TaskRabbit or whatever and find you a guy who can get you hung, girl. And then what else did you want to talk about?
Oh, I want to give a PSA to the guys out there.
Okay. Public service announcement for the idiots out there.
Okay. When you reach out to women, so I'm not on any of the dating apps anymore. As we know, I'm taking a hiatus. But some guy got in touch with me on Facebook and he connected with me. And that's always hard because I never know if they're fans of the podcast because he's from like a burb here. I don't know.
Guys don't listen to this.
And so, well, that's not true. That's not true at all. Anyway, so he reached out. I just accepted him as a friend, whatever. And his opening line was like, haven't we like been connected before on Facebook? And I was like, you don't look familiar to me. And I thought maybe you listened to the podcast. He's like, what podcast? And then I knew. I was like, oh, creep. So this is the PSA for the guys though. Never. It's the worst line I've ever heard is, why is a pretty girl like you still single? Because there's no good answer to that.
You could be like, I'm not pretty. It's
truth?
mostly that.
I could list my damages. I could list, right, like my trauma, right, whatever it is. And I'm like, no, there's no good answer to that. It's just like, I don't know. Yeah, great question. Like, what do you say to that?
I don't think you say anything. I mean, in general, guys, that's probably solid advice because when someone says that, it's essentially like, oh, yeah, what is your damage? There's something inherently wrong with you. I feel like
I'm going to just start being honest. I'm going to be like, well, I'm divorced and here are my triggers and see what happens. If someone's like, okay, cool, let's meet.
I'm a single dog mom with a margarita problem. If you feel like you can take this on, let's do it.
Could you imagine? Maybe I should do it as like a social experiment.
So you said, but pre-show, you were saying that you were having a couple instances of that happening.
I don't know what's going on. I didn't realize it was still cuffing season. I thought that was
holiday.
Yeah.
No, as long as it's cold outside, it's still cuffing season.
Well, there are like people I haven't talked to, like people I never met that I met on like Bumble or whatever, but we never like actually met up.
How many millions of people are that?
Well, there are quite a few.
I'm sure.
But there are only a handful that have been reached. Like
the bodies are surfacing.
Yeah, but it's random shit. Like people I haven't talked to in a year. And then here's what's even more fucking depressing is that stupid people you may know come up, on Facebook. And and one of them was a guy that I went out with on a date probably like less than a year ago, maybe 8 months ago. His name came up and then his picture was him proposing to a girl. And I was like, the fuck? It's only been 8 months.
No.
I was like, we either overlapped or
he was ready to seal the deal and you just couldn't fill that hole for him, Jenna.
I guess not.
Tough luck. Well,
I know. And I was like, that's depressing.
So PSA, if you're one of the guys out there, one of the numerous men Jenna has matched with on Bumble, Hinge, Tinder, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, Coffee Meets Bagel, any of those apps, if you're on there and you've crossed paths with Jenna, do not get in those DMs asking her why she's single.
Yeah.
Or don't say any of those things.
Just don't say any of those things. It's a bad line, but men say it all the time. So I feel the need to let you know it's not good.
You should smile more. On that note, why don't we introduce our guest?
Let's.
Okay, so I know I say it's become kind of a running joke that every week I say, "Oh, I'm really excited to have this."
You do
guest.
say that every week.
Like if we were playing Menage-A-Pod bingo drinking game, like there would be a square for TJ says he's excited about the guest. Mm-hmm. But today we could have like multiple squares on the bingo board for how excited I am about this guest. So this week we're joined by Chicago area comedian and podcaster Be Casper from the podcast That Time I Got Arrested. If you guys listen to our show, you've probably heard me mention it a time or two before. I can only say that we're super stoked to have her here. We both love the podcast. We're super big fans. So with no further ado, welcome to the show.
Hi.
It's so nice to have you.
Thanks. I'm such a big fan. I've been trying to get on this show for literally months. So
really?
Hello. Yeah.
That's because you were talking to the wrong person.
Well, no, I've been
just kidding.
I've been listening for a long time. Like I've been a listener for months and like a lot of my friends have been on the show and I'm just kind of like, what the fuck? Every time someone else is on, I'm like, how did you do that? I'll slide in their DMs and I'll be like, how'd you get on that podcast? Huh?
It's funny because I obviously communicate with a lot of people about the podcast and there's so many people who want to have on and having you on was something we definitely want to do for a while, but I am horrible at the organizational elements that happen behind this podcast. So sometimes it's like, yeah, we'll have this person on. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to schedule these now. Fuck.
I remember when he sent me your podcast, the link to it was the first episode,
the prologue,
right?
Yeah. Yikes.
And I was in the airport. I was stranded. When was it? It was before Christmas, probably,
it was right before Christmas, yeah.
So I was stranded in the airport trying to get out of LaGuardia. It sucked with a 6-year-old, my nephew, and the dog. And it was like, we were delayed for like 6 hours. It sucked. And I was complaining to TJ and he was like, I've got something for you to listen to. And I was like, great. And he sent it to me and he's like, I love her. We have to have her on. And I was hooked within the first 3 minutes. And I'm like texting him. I was like, holy shit. Like your story is bananas. I like your survival tactics, I think are pretty incredible.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, goodness, what a life. I feel like we should kind of dig in there because for those that haven't listened, I think it would be a really good background if you don't mind telling, just like summing that first 11-minute episode.
Fuck, dude.
You don't have to go super deep. Don't have to go super deep.
Tell us a little bit.
Just like the synopsis of how what made you decide to do the podcast, kind of what the basic story.
Oh my God.
Like your elevator pitch.
I really don't have one because it's so intense.
It is so intense.
You know, it's hard to compartmentalize it. I think that like when I started doing comedy, I never had any jokes about anything that's on the podcast. All of my jokes are essentially lies. And it was kind of like, I have all of this dark shit. Like that's what makes a comedian good, right? You like spin your trauma into gold.
Literally just said that before you got here.
But like, how do you make like the most fucked up thing that's ever happened to you, like funny and entertaining? And I think the problem that I face is that I didn't have enough time. You know, it's like, I can't go up on stage and in 5 minutes be like, so I was raped when I was 5 and I watched someone die.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's not funny. That's like, that's fucked up. That's something that I literally never told anyone for, 27 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like how do I, like, what do you do with that? Like, how do you get that? How do you make that, entertaining and accessible to people? And my struggle with comedy was that there wasn't enough time. So then eventually I got into podcasting. And so, I mean, what's my podcast about? I mean, I kind of summed it up, but it's also like, it's more than that, there's a lot to it. It's very like layered and it's sort of evolved over time. So I'm always so happy when anyone's like, I like this. Like, I'm like, oh, that's such a relief because it's like my trauma. And it's like the hardest thing to tell anyone, it's like when I meet someone or go on a first date, I'm just like, you should just listen to my podcast. So we don't have to have that really awkward conversation,
It's like you can have it alone in your car or living room.
Right.
Then call me with any comments, questions, or concerns.
Yeah. And we'll text about it. Like we don't even have to like sit face to face and like have that conversation, So it honestly, it just makes it easier for me to like be around people because like I'm fucked up. And a lot of, the question would be like, so why though? And it's like, well, I made a podcast about it.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I find that our podcast fucks with my dating life. So
yeah, same. Same.
It's like I mean, a version. I'm not nearly as open as you are about life, which I try to be. And the joke is that like I feel like I'm the one who always talks more about like individual stories, but yours are so like amazing and vulnerable and open. I think it is so well done. But I'm always thinking like, gosh, man, this podcast really fucks me when it comes to dating. So like I can't even imagine like how that would be. Like, I know you joked about it, but do you really say, listen to my podcast? Cause I never bring up the podcast until I absolutely have to.
Well, I think that like, I have a joke about like dating apps cause I'm not on any apps, but like, I feel like
smart
Instagram is like my dating app.
Oh,
cause like a lot of people fucking slide into my DMs and it's like weird. I've had such a mixed response. Like I have couples that ask me to have threesomes and treat me like some kind of sex therapist. And then I have dudes say like, wild things. I have guys offer me money for sex and like
what the fuck?
Yeah, and then I have like dudes that are in my social circle that are like, hey, I listened to your podcast and like you're kind of weird, like do you want to hang out? And I'm like yeah. And then more often than not it's like usually it's like it never translates well because me as a person and like me as a podcast are two separate entities, even though it's like
totally
yes, I am telling you my whole life story and shit, but you're like hearing specific stories. You're not like talking to me on like a face-to-face, like real, like we're just shooting the shit and just like getting high and like talking level, So even if you think you know me like through the podcast, like you don't really know me,
right? You just know like a series of stories.
Yeah. I went on a date with someone recently and we like went and saw Star Wars. And then at the end of the day, I could tell he like wasn't really like he was like feeling it and like I kind of wasn't. And he like tried to like kiss me and I like turned away and then he started like negging me and I cried and I'm like, that doesn't work on me.
Yeah.
Cause I'll just cry in your face and like, I don't give a fuck,
But also like, who does that?
Assholes, sociopaths.
Yeah. Children. How old was he?
I think he's like 26, but all night he's like, I can't believe this is what your voice really sounds like. And I'm like, all right, enough with like the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Ugh.
I can say, like, there have been times where I've been on dating apps and I've had stuff about our podcast in my profile, like not a ton about it, but just like as a joke. And then, cause people will come look at it. And oddly, it hasn't been a problem. I think we've gotten a lot of listeners like that. But the weird part is it's kind of the same thing. Like you get people who listen and then reach out through social media, or you see them on a dating app and you're like, oh, hey person. And they know like your entire life. Yeah. And it feels like a very unlevel playing field. And even though Jenna frequently says that I'm not open at all on here, if you've listened to 65, 70 hours of me talking, you certainly have gotten a pretty solid idea about some level of my like attitude and personality. So the podcast can be a definite impediment to the dating life for sure.
But not for men. Like that's the other thing is I feel like we've said this before. Most of the men that I meet care about the podcast.
Care in like what way?
Care in like a, well, I think I can be a lot to handle. And
Word.
and I think they're just, I don't know, like, cause the last guy I dated, he was, not very like, he like asked me questions like, how many people have you had sex with? I haven't been asked that question since I was in college. Right. So, what?
Did you break out like a slide rule and an abacus to like get to the bottom of that?
I was like, how much time do you have?
You had like one of those counters where you're like sliding beads over.
But like we're such a like sex positive podcast here. So like he would say things like that I felt like was slut shaming. And I'd be like, I don't even know what that means. Like I don't even use that word. Like what does a slut mean? What does that mean to you? Like I would get annoyed. And so I'm that person. And I think some of that might come through on this. And I feel like there's a lot to handle, especially when it comes to sex.
Is it
men? Well, not for real men, I'm finding, but for a lot of men.
That's interesting. Oh, I just think a lot of people suck though. So
that's it. A lot of people suck, right? And then I literally the last breakup I went through. My sister's also going through a divorce, unfortunately, and I said to her, I was like, I get after so much like disappointment why people would date a woman. I would date a woman now. Like, I feel like it's so much easier. Like, I just feel like there's a depth there that I find a lot of men might lack. So, or at least the ones I'm meeting, not all of them, I'm sure. But I just feel like, man, we'd get it. We'd get each other, you know?
Sexuality is fluid.
Yeah.
When it comes to like interpersonal relationships, I think you can develop like a romantic seeming relationship, with that intimacy that comes from sex, even without sex. But like, I don't know. It's different for everyone.
Right. Yep. So I actually have a couple of questions, and one of them might be ridiculous, and it just popped in my head right now.
No, it's okay. So, I'm here to get grilled, so let's do it.
No grillings. So, we mentioned you have this podcast called That Time I Got Arrested. You talked a little bit about that. Everybody listening right now, make sure you follow her at That Time I Got Arrested and at Be Casper, Be_Casper at Instagram. But on your Instagram, it says stupid spoiled slut.
Yeah.
What was the impetus to that? Like, literally, you guys were just talking that, I was like, wait. Because Jenna said she was talking about slut and slut shaming, and I was like, I'm pretty sure her Instagram says that. I'm going to ask this.
Right. All right. So, fuck. So this
hot seat.
No, I know. Okay, so this isn't something that I've like talked about publicly on my podcast yet, but
well done, Teach.
I recently switched studios, and I was at one podcasting studio, and then within the last like month or two, like fully moved to a new one. And I did that because I had some like shit go down with my former producer.
Okay.
And so like this guy that I met through comedians who produced my podcast for almost a year, we like worked together very closely, like me sitting in a room with him.
Telling these stories.
Right. And so it's like we had to develop like a very like close relationship, and like he went through a divorce and like was very inappropriate and hit on me. And then we got into like a big fight one night. And he called me a stupid spoiled slut.
Oh.
And I fired him.
Yeah.
Good.
And then I changed my Instagram.
Good for you.
Well, like he said it. He goes, everyone thinks you're a stupid, spoiled slut, and now all of your episodes will be $100. And they were like $40 like previously. So I was like, And so I just like sat there like very quietly, and we'd been fighting like back and forth for maybe like 4 hours, and he was like yelling at me because I wouldn't hang out with him. And I'm like, I won't hang out with you because you like hit on me last February and it made me uncomfortable, and I like never said anything to your wife, and now they're like going through a divorce. And so so it was like, and I'm like, I can't believe that you've listened to me talk about everything that I've talked about, and you have the fucking nerve to treat me like that. And he'll get his own episode someday. I didn't realize that my podcast is actually just like fuck men.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I feel.
Fuck
I don't
us.
think it's supposed to be like that, but I do that. Yeah.
We are the worst. I get it.
Yeah.
Right. And like he was like a former like a hippie person who was like so on the level with me of like everything, and like was so like in it and really believed in the show, and like and helped me for so long because I had no idea what I was doing or no idea what the direction was. And people who are like, it sounds good, or like the story's good, like that was so much him because he was the audio engineer and he was the editor, and like he was the one who I was telling all of the stories to before, and we were the ones getting high like before I would record, and then sit there, and then he'd like be like and ask me questions where I'm like, oh, I'm leaving out these details, you know. So it's like he was a big reason why the show was good. And at the end of the day, he was like, you're just a stupid spoiled slut. And I was like all right. I was like, cool. And then so I'm like, I think that that's really funny when people, especially men, when they like show their true colors of how little they really think about women, about how much we actually don't matter, about how subservient our role in, you know, in comparison to theirs is. And it's like, they can be the fucking coolest guy. And then underneath it all, like that's who they really are. And that's rape culture, unfortunately. And that's like what I'm actually doing with this podcast is like exposing the corruption behind, you know, not only like the criminal justice system, but like with like men and the way that they treat women in general. Whoa.
No, I love it. That's incredible.
So like, I think it's really funny to have someone who I worked with that closely be like know me so well, know me as well as anyone who like listens to the show. Even better, because he sat there with me like before and after.
It's such a personal thing. I can imagine.
And then to be like, you're a stupid spoiled slut. And I'm like, all right.
But that I think is what's so fucked up about it is that there are probably moments, there are obviously moments that you guys shared together, right, in that room. Like, and when I mean intimate, I mean like personal, right? I don't mean like physically intimate. I just mean like you're just telling him these really intimate things. And then it feels like a personal attack when someone turns around and says stuff like that to you. Because you're like, wait a minute. Like this, that's how I would feel. I would feel like, wait a minute. Like we're supposed to be
not only that,
too
but
much about me.
Extremely
and don't use it against
stories.
me. Right, exactly. And then don't like turn around and use it against me. Like that feels predatory.
Yeah, it is, but that's not how it makes me feel. How it makes me feel is like, now I see him, you know, it's like
totally.
I have the benefit of being able to be like, so that's who you are. And now like the worst thing I could ever do to someone is take myself out of their life, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, now I've moved on. Now you don't have my show anymore. Like now you don't get to be friends with me anymore.
Good for
and
you.
Every other comedian that was on his network also left with me. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So he like lost everything like real quick by, you know, just showing his true colors, which I think is dope.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
That could not be more dope.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then
that's a very strong thing to say, because
we've been fighting for a while, and like I had been avoiding hanging out with him, and he kept like asking me to hang out, but like he kept like hitting on me, and I'm like, no, you know, like we work together, I pay you, like no.
Yeah.
This is like a professional relationship. Yeah,
it's
but I mean,
like,
I gotta imagine
Weinstein or whatever.
On that level, though. But there is so much of that like out there, not only in comedy or entertainment, but just fucking everywhere. You know,
just like standard one-on-one conversation, male female, frequently gets like that for sure.
Yeah. What the fuck? Are we people?
We are.
I mean, you know, I think so.
I just think. I mean, we need more people who need to realize that there has to be self-awareness, and like people have to like really want to do better and be better. And until like we have a substantial amount of people who are like making those changes. It's such a the culture. It's so hard to overcome that.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with like our society's look on sexuality and how repressed it is, and how we're not taught to like explore like fundamental things like pleasure and intimacy and, vulnerability. And that's not really like what we're told as like American citizens is like our, pillars. Like it's very much like about being like, like pious and like patriotic and like loyal.
All that sounds garbage to me.
Well, it is garbage. But I mean, like until we're all taught how to do it right, then we're all just going to do it wrong.
You know what's interesting about that? So have you read that book, Sex at Dawn?
Yeah.
Okay, so remember in the beginning, and I didn't know this, but in the beginning they said like back in cavemen days, right? Like back in the day, women actually had multiple men and it was normal, right? Just as normal it was for men to have them, it was normal for women to have them.
B's like, I approve this message.
But then as like society changed and then there was like a need for like someone to take care of the kids while the husband went out hunting and gathering and all the things that cavemen did, right? Like this from an evolutionary standpoint, it was sort of like, I don't want to say bred, but it was sort of kind of like bred. Well, not really, because I guess it's in us. What's the word I'm looking for? It was just sort of like dropped off, right? It like wasn't acceptable anymore, generation after generation after generation, for women to like be like men and have multiple partners.
Yeah, there was something in also the People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. The whole beginning is about indigenous cultures in this country and how it was just like polyamorous, like sex and like hanging out and smoking weed, and then like the British came and they were like, fuck, you need to put some clothes on. I know, and they fucked it up,
Really did.
Well, religion fucked it up, but like they fucked it up too,
Yeah.
It's a combination of everything. And it's like, it is just like a mental conspiracy on everyone. It's like we are just not taught correctly. So we, fuck it up.
So true. And then white men come in.
The ultimate enemy.
I know.
I like stare right at your face, TJ.
I try to be an ally. I, as everyone, am flawed and a work in progress, but I definitely try to do better every day.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, well, it's so nice. I hear so many guys say that publicly, and then it's like, but like, who is anyone behind closed doors? It's
totally.
It's like you never know until you know, and that's just the fun part about being alive. It's like you get to find out.
But what's scary about that, and it happens in dating, so it also happened with your relationship with your producer, is it's like you don't see that person for at least 6 months, 4 to 6 months. Like I didn't, like certain things you see at a 6-month mark in a relationship or in a working relationship or whatever it may be, it's not the person that you met. And so it's like, how do you know going into it that they're just assholes?
That's the public relations phase. We've talked about it before. The first like 3 to 6 months in any relationship, whether it's like a romantic, friendship, professional, whatever, I think you see levels of someone's personality kind of like in layers, and it slowly like peeled back. And then at a certain amount in, whether it's 3 months, whatever that is for that relationship, you finally truly get to know that person. And it's frequently quite different than what I think it is in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, we're all wearing a mask, but
totally.
For sure.
Totally. So I know that in the beginning of this, I asked you to sum up the, whatever. First episode,
the podcast.
The first episode, which I understand how that could be hard. But I feel like it might be nice for the listeners to kind of hear just a little bit maybe about if you're comfortable talking about it, a little bit about like growing up in your household and what that was like, because I think where we'd like to take this is sort of how this affects your relationships now. And so I think it's important for the listeners who haven't been able to listen to your podcast yet,
who definitely should
100%, to get an idea of that.
Yeah. I mean, whoa. Okay. Fuck. Dude.
I mean, you don't have to tell it all. Just kind of
no, it's okay. It's hard because I'm like grieving right now, and both my parents are dead, and my grandmother died recently, and that's one of the biggest reasons I was like able to even do this, because I don't think I could have like been this open if they
were listening.
Well, if they, my grandmother did listen up until a certain point until she died, actually. Oh, but then it's more like it's like it hurts them.
Sure.
So it's like, I don't want to like hurt them. And it's fine that I can like say this stuff now, but like my childhood was rough. Yeah. Like the most diplomatic way to put it is just I had a rough childhood, you know, and it was very chaotic and it was dangerous and it was scary and I was never safe.
Yeah.
And so that was like, like 0 to 14, and then I went to a year-round boarding school. So that was like, you know, I basically like went to college when I was 14.
Right.
Yeah.
And I never got to come home. You know, we had quarters instead of semesters. And so instead of having like a traditional summer break, we would have 2 weeks off every quarter. And then I would usually spend that time like traveling or like alone. And so I think that I'm an only child. Both my parents are dead, and I've spent the majority of my life alone, and I had a fucked up childhood. So like, you know, the podcast is like a lot of like my stories of just being like, this is what happens when you like fuck someone up from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I'm still cool.
Yeah.
You are.
I think I'm still a nice
too.
person, but that doesn't mean that I haven't made like all of the mistakes, you know? And so when I started the podcast originally, I was just thinking, okay, I'll tell all these crazy stories about getting arrested. And I thought I would end like when I got to prison. And I'm like, I'm not even really trying to like get
Spoiler alert, guys.
Right. Well, I just thought like when I get to that point, like I'm just establishing credibility as someone who's like been through the criminal justice system so many times that I can interview other people about times that they got arrested. And then we can just like add depth to that side of life, which I don't feel like really exists outside of like kind of like trashy reality TV shows on Netflix.
For sure.
Like that's not the same thing as being like, but who are you outside of these crimes that you've committed? And what I realized is that I'm really bad at talking to people because I'm an only child. And so the interviews like sucked. And I went like mini viral over the summer. And so I got a lot of like feedback of what people liked and like didn't like. And they were just like, stop interviewing. And they were like, we want to hear. What I heard back from the audience was that they wanted to hear about prison, and they wanted to hear about you know, the things that I tease in the intro.
Right.
And so then over time I was like, all right, guys, this is what you're into. Okay. So then I just like, I really like went in, and I'm like, I'll just keep doing this thing where I'm having like a live journal podcast.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think I love it. You know, a big part of, as I mentioned in a previous episode, and I know I've told you personally, I listened to the first 44 episodes over like a 3-day span. You refer to me on your podcast as a stan. I absolutely am a stan. Like, following the journey, I would conservatively, I've told in person 40 people about your podcast.
Oh my goodness.
And I've posted about it on social media. I constantly spread the word. So I cannot say enough for everyone out there to definitely listen to it. And, you know, before you came over today, Jen and I were like talking about you and how the interview is going to go. And I just said, you know, as someone who's not known for being incredibly open about my life on here, I had a pretty fraught childhood as well. And like listening to you talk about your life and the things you went through, guys, if you listen to it all. Trigger warning for definitely a couple episodes, certainly episode 1, certainly I think 17 is very much trigger warning. But if you've gone through some stuff and you've like really had some trauma, whether it's something you talk about openly or not, there's something that was so cathartic for me to like hear you be so open. And I'm not a guy who's like always super open about that. So that was really, really awesome. So I love that.
Thanks. That's so nice. I get that a lot. And my favorite part of doing the show is being able to connect with people that have had, you know, similar, worse, different, varied experiences. And people write me like letters. Like I get Microsoft like Word documents that are pages and pages long of people telling me their stories. And like, I connect with them in a way where it's like, I have people who listen to the podcast who I speak to every day now, you know, like they text me, like we FaceTime, like I like to say that like everyone who listens is just like a friend I haven't met yet because like we get so close, you know? So I always love to hear back of like how it makes them feel. Thank you. But also like, what did you go through? You know, like what was that like? Like, oh my God, how did you make it? Whoa, what do you do every day? Like, how do you exist in this world knowing that like that kind of darkness is out there?
Yeah.
You know, and then that's like, that makes me feel so much less alone, and it makes me want to die less. So
well, that's a positive spin on
well,
that
then
one.
I'm just here doing good works then.
Yeah,
Telling you that I love you. So
you really are.
well, it's symbiotic, you know?
Awesome. So I also wanted to ask you, you know, clearly you've gone through some crazy things, and do you think, not even at a romantic level, but do you think sometimes like just like on a I mean like person to person, I know like we've talked previously and I've heard you say things on your show, and even just since you've been here, about like not loving certain aspects of like people, just like sometimes being like, oh, this sucks, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to. Do you think that some of the things that happened to you were formative in kind of like how you view interacting with new people and like, does any of that make sense?
Yeah. I think I'm really sensitive.
Okay.
Is what I would boil it down to. Is I'm really sensitive to my environment, and I'm really sensitive to other people. So I can sort of always like, this is weird, and I haven't gotten into this in the show yet either, but it's like ever since I died, like I can sort of like see how people feel.
You can't just drop a nugget like that and then not. Like people are gonna be like, wait, what?
Well, I'll say this. Whatever you say about it, clearly you don't have to give the full story, because save that bomb for your podcast.
No, it's okay.
For
I
sure.
love to talk about it. I do.
Okay.
I do. People don't like to talk about it with me as much as I like to talk about it with them.
I'll talk about anything with you. You're awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I jumped off a 5-story building 3 years ago.
Oof.
And I died for 19 seconds. I like bled out. And
Holy shit.
I was intubated, and they had to do that. And I like came back.
Oh my
Guys,
God.
for those of you who can't see her, which is everyone since that video, she just did like the defibrillator and kind of like made a little noise, and that just happened.
Yeah, no one gets to see my like weird facial expressions when I'm doing it. But yeah, so I had like I guess you call it a near-death experience, but I actually died. So I don't know what the difference is. But I've also been fortunate enough to do so many drugs that like I've smoked enough DMT that when I actually had my like DMT death trip experience, it was very like familiar to me.
Oh.
And when I'm sorry, I'm like saying so much that I know is just like going over your head.
No, you're fine.
No, I got it.
And so I like went back to a place that I've been many times before in my like death trip, and then
Sorry, the dog is snoring.
no, it's so cute. That experience was so powerful and transformative for me that when I came back, I was very much like a different. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah, he's like, I understand. I am passed out right now. Actually,
I'm a different person, and part of what that is just I can see the way people feel, and I'm really sensitive to someone's like I can almost like see someone's pain just like right when I meet them.
Yeah,
which is like such a weird experience, but it makes me feel like very different in the way that I interact with people because I can be so empathetic, but at the same time, it's like I have to preserve that like energy in a way. So I'm really careful about who I spend time with. And then
smart.
When I spend time with people that are not like in a good place emotionally, where they sort of like are like black holes, you know, is like how I like to call it. When I get around those people, I get really drained, and it's like affects me almost in like a physical way, like to the point where like I'll get sad, I'll cry, I'll like have to leave, and it's uncomfortable, and it makes relationships now, ever since I died, it makes them much more difficult, but it also makes them deeper. So it's like that's good, right?
Out,
Yeah. I totally believe that because you know I'm a big fan of mediums and psychics, and we know a few.
It's basically royalty, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I'm a big fan of mediums, and we have a couple of them in our family as friends, you know, and I talked about my reading the last 2 episodes ago, maybe
I remember.
my most recent one. And
we did have
past
some people
life regression trauma.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so into that. I'm afraid of it a little bit, honestly, because I don't know if I want to remember that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think it would be so interesting to like hear what happened and then understand why it's manifesting in my life now. But what they say, what I've heard a lot from mediums, is that the same thing of what you said, right? So a lot of them are also empaths, and they take on that energy and that like sadness, and they're exhausted after a reading.
Yeah.
Especially people like who will, you know, all her entire thing is like around death and love, like losing loved ones. So she's not just giving like ordinary, like, here's your relationship and here's what your job's going to do. Readings are all about death and things like that. So that can be a little bit heavy. And so I hear that a lot. That's a very common thing. Do you think you now have like abilities?
I definitely
as well?
do. Yeah.
Do you see dead people?
Not in like the traditional sense.
Okay.
But I can tell you that when you die, you do meet every version of yourself.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. And it's also
Tell me more.
It's like it's really fucked up because ever since I died, now I just am like, I'm not going to kill myself again, but I do feel like I cannot wait to die because it is peaceful.
Oh, good.
And beautiful. And
really?
Like, yeah, it's so beautiful. And like everyone you've ever loved or like felt connected to, you just have this incredible sense of like togetherness and safety, which I think is probably everyone's biggest fear.
Yeah.
Is that you think when you die that it's either blank or a separation, but it's actually like a returning, which I'm like, whoa, that's so great. But it's like, you can't tell alive humans, where you're just like, it's okay, it gets better when you die.
Yeah.
Because people don't believe you, you know?
So was there someone there to greet you?
Yeah. Like 2 entities that I had seen many, many times during like previous DMT trips. So it was like, I really felt like I was coming home in a way where I'm like, oh, it's you guys? I'm like, no way. I'm like, this is death? What? Like I had that feeling. And it was weird that I could even experience like those kinds of emotions, like surprise, excitement, elation, you know? And then like peace and comfort. And they literally told me, they were like, look, you can like move on, or like you can go back because you're not done.
Oh, interesting. Will you get a choice? I didn't know that. I thought you had a story that you had to fulfill on Earth. That was my belief, was that you are in this like heaven of sorts, whatever you want to call it, a place, another plane, and you sort of know what your story is going to be on Earth, because you're sent here to learn lessons.
Yeah.
And so you can pick sort of what your life is going to look like.
Like choose your own adventure book?
Yeah, sort of like a movie. Yeah, where you choose.
Fuck, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes.
Like that crazy version of Black Mirror, the Bandersnatch or whatever it was called, the one where you could choose your own. Oh.
But yeah, basically, and you kind of choose what your life is going to look like in order to learn these lessons. And so I thought it was all planned out for you. So it's interesting that you got,
well, I think
free will too, I guess.
That, and they were also like, you're not done. So like they just said you died before you were supposed to.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, word.
You're like, dope. Yeah, I'll go back. Sounds good. Fuck.
I know, but then immediately I came back, and then like Trump got elected, and I was like, fuck, I'm in the wrong dimension. You know, it was scary for a while. I really wasn't sure. I thought I had made a mistake. And now the podcast, I'm like, all right, I guess this is chill.
Totally. Yeah. And you're probably helping, as you know, so many people. So maybe that is your
it's weird to think about, but it's nice. I love hearing from people that like listen. It's just, and I'm at the point with it where I get a message every day from someone being like, I'm on this episode, or like, I just found this, and they're like, and that's so cool, you know?
Yeah.
But actually, a woman that I like just randomly friended on Facebook started listening to this podcast, heard me talk about her, decided our podcast sucked, checked out on it.
Oh, that's nice.
went to hers.
Fuck you, listener.
Just
kidding.
But then messaged her and basically, and like was kind of like, but this guy just randomly friended me. I saw he does this podcast.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is funny because that's like the random friending is all about getting people to listen to the podcast. So that worked. Joke's on you, lady. I don't care if you liked it. Took that listen and put it in the fucking bank.
Net positive. That's what I like to call it. Net positive downloads.
Yeah.
I know our first bad review actually was a woman who we were like 7 episodes in, and she was like, the first episode was good. I listened to all of them. I don't see this podcast going anywhere. And I was like, well, you listened to 7 of them, bitch. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, actually, no, you just helped me a bunch.
Yeah.
I'm like, you not only did you 7, you wrote a review. Yes, it was a 1-star review, and you said we sucked, but you said the first episode was redeemable. So
I got a 1-star once from one of Lex's stalkers.
Really?
And they like wrote it, but being like, this podcast is all about this woman who hates men. I'm like,
I saw that.
I posted on my Instagram. I was so proud. I was like, that's right.
Like,
kudos to me.
I was like, you got it.
Message received. So you said that was someone who knew Alexis?
It was her stalker.
Ooh, so
her stalker from Twitch. Then she had like blocked him, and then he like started following me because she would like mention me on her Twitch so many times. And then she like will shout out my podcast every once in a while.
Yeah.
And so then he like went and looked at it, and then and like wrote a message. And I'm like, this could be literally no one else, because all the other reviews are like, we love this, we love you. And then there's this one that like all she talks about is how men suck and how men are bad, and actually she's the bad one. And I'm like,
you're the fucking worst. And guys, Alexis is actually one of B's best friends. Alexis Knoll, she's a Chicago comedian. She's going to be coming on as well, and a Twitch streamer. So she's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah, she's my roommate.
Super stoked about her.
Wait, so I have a question. How long physically, not emotionally,
Sure.
I'm sure you're probably still going through
How long
that.
have you been dead?
No, how long did it take you to heal from that?
Physically? I mean, never. I'm like never going to be the same.
Yeah.
You know, so I think I'm like permanently disabled in certain ways, and I experience pain, 100% of the time. There's like never a moment that I'm not like in some kind of small or large agony because I have a ton of metal in my body. Oh. And so like they can't give you like fake cartilage, so they can like replace your bones, but then like your bones don't have any like goop to like move them around. So I get real stiff and real sore. So I'm really into like new age, like, cause I don't take any opiates. I do a lot of like,
weed smoking,
Ayurvedic healing techniques. Okay. I do a lot of breath work. I do like, this sounds like so fucking lame, but I do a lot of like chakra energy.
Yeah. Like Reiki.
Yeah. And I do like cryotherapy. Like I do float tanks. Like I get massages twice a week. Like I do everything you can do that's not like hard drugs to like manage the pain, but I'm in pain all the time. That's what it is.
But like acupuncture.
Yeah. But it's hard because of the metal. Oh, so it's like the spots that they would need to get to, they can't get to, and my nerves are in different places because of how bad the injuries were.
Wow.
So it's like you can touch one spot in my arm and I feel it somewhere else.
Really?
Yeah, because they had to like move. I'm so lucky that I can walk. I'm so lucky that I can see. I am so fucking lucky that I have both of my arms, because this one very easily could have like gone. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because I felt like, I was like conscious when I did it, but like I felt like this. So it's like I shattered my elbow.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I like want to hug her.
We can hug.
Okay.
She, I will say, loves hugs. She will hug you.
I mean, I'm going to hug you after this. I am too. I mean, what an incredible story. And just like so, you have such a good presence about you.
Oh, thank you.
In a room, like you're very like mellow, very like you feel very centered, even though I've heard you, whatever your story. Yeah. I don't know. Your energy doesn't feel that way for some reason. So you feel very like, just like very centered, which is nice to know after so much stuff you've been through.
It's because I'm dead.
Still.
You're just a walking ghost? I don't know. What does that mean?
Well,
your corporeal being is done.
Right. It's just it's so hard to explain, but the only way I can say it is that I died and I'm different now. And so, and like people have commented on that a lot about the way that I make them feel, when I'm around. And it is this like weird, like almost eerie kind of calm sometimes. And sometimes it honestly makes people uncomfortable because they're like, that's like too much, But then also it's usually good where someone wants to like open up, unless they're a black hole, and then I'm like, yikes.
Yeah. And then you're like running so fast and then you're in pain.
Well, it's hard though, because when I see people in pain, I really want, and I have this problem where I'm like, oh, I can help people. It's like, I can help people. So like, I want to help people, but you really have to, and I'm trying to get better about this, about working hard to like preserve my like center, because it's so easy to get, and I guess this kind of goes into like the relationship thing, because it's especially in like romantic relationships, it's really easy for me to get like pulled down into a dark place.
Yep.
And
or
like
maybe like need to fix.
Yeah, need to fix or need to help so bad that I end up like destroying myself.
Yep.
And that's been like a real serious, dangerous problem for me. And I'm kind of in this weird phase where it's like I've only always been in like very serious, very long-term relationships, like 6 years, 5 years, a year, 6 months, like.
Where do you find those?
Well, it's just like, it's like weird. The older I get, the shorter my relationships get, because it's like I've become less tolerable as I've gotten older.
I don't believe that. You
disagree.
I think you probably just know more of what you want. And you're, I know, but like that's probably partially true, right? Because or I've just gotten like more comfortable in my crazy, and so it's like I'm fine, like letting it out sooner.
Can that be the title of the episode?
Comfortable in my crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Actually.
Yeah. I like it too.
But so it's just like it's really hard. So I've spent my whole life in really long relationships, and now I'm at this phase where I'm like almost 30, and for the first time in my life, I'm just like, see this casual sex thing.
Oh, it's good. It's really good, unless you get attached or your headboard falls on you.
Right. The only way I can do it that I have found that works for me, because I will get attached if I have any kind of like emotional like relationship with someone. I'm just like, okay, so are we in love?
Yeah. Well, that's when it gets hard, especially if you're so like empathetic and.
Well, especially if they like can make me come. I'm like, are we in love?
Fair. But that's all it takes for us ladies. Probably all it takes for you men too.
Really, like, do you smoke pot? Can you make me come? Like, are we in love? Like,
low bar, my friend. Low bar. We're going to raise that a little bit for you, but that's a good start.
Bonus points if you like jam bands.
Well, no, even then, like, fuck those guys because they're like trash. But yeah. But so now I'm like almost 30, and I'm like casual sex, but it has to be like almost anonymous. Like you don't get to even really know my first name. And like, don't ever call me again. Even if, and like, sometimes that's hard because like the sex is really good, and I'm like,
like to try that again.
Right. But I'm like, we can't. If I like do it again, you'll fuck me up.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I was gonna say even like a friends with benefits kind of thing.
No, fuck that. Fuck that.
Yeah, no, that got me in trouble once.
Yeah, that's too emotionally fraught for sure.
Yeah,
friends with benefits fucks you up.
It does.
No, I tried that. This is fucked up. I'll tell you guys a story. This is like how open I am on my podcast listeners. So if you want to like taste of it, here you go. So the other night I was on a first date, right? Like, wasn't feeling this first date. Went to the bathroom. Oh, this is embarrassing. Went to the bathroom. Low-key like texted a dude that I'm friends with being like, we should fuck.
Wow.
And then like went back to the date and was just kind of like, when is this going to be over? Like looking at my phone being like, I hope he texts me back.
Did he?
No.
Oh, dick.
No, it was just like, oh, so awkward. And I was like, right, that's not what you're doing, and that's a bad idea. And then I just had to like, I could have like backpedaled and been like, that was like, I didn't mean it. I was fucked up, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I don't drink, but I was like, I was fucked up, I didn't mean it. But instead I just like let it like hang in the silence, and maybe we just don't talk anymore.
Or maybe just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Bad messages. It's like something on your credit report. After like 7 days, it falls off. It's like it didn't even happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's good to know.
Yeah. If you get a bad text, if it doesn't get a response after 7 days, the air is clear. You can text again. Okay. I just made up a rule right there.
I was like, I've never heard that before, because women, we hang on to that shit. I will remember that forever.
Well, he's a comedian when we work together, so I was like, ew.
Oh shit, you really do have to see him.
No, yeah, we'll deal with it eventually.
Oh, that'll be fun.
It just might be like, maybe we're not tight anymore because I'm a creep. I'm the creep, at the end of the day.
The predator.
What did you say?
Yeah. I said like, I think I was like, look, I know all the reasons like why we shouldn't or can't or like won't fuck. I'm like, but I want to though. Just kind of like left it open. I'm like, but I want to. So like, I was just waiting for people to be like, yeah, me too.
I mean, that's not terrible.
No.
And honestly though,
that's like
a
very sweet and endearing way to go for some dick.
I also kind of feel like there was a lot of ways he could play that with like, and shouldn't have just like not responded. He could have just been like, LOL, are you fucked up? Like,
right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there could have been a way to like blow that off without having to.
No, we're like pretty good friends too, but I saw him in a pair of khakis at a show once, and I'm like, ever since then.
Do people wear khakis still?
He did.
Did they have pleats in the front? Please say yes.
I don't remember, but I do know what religion he grew up in, Yeah.
Just Jehovah's Witness. Like, I don't remember what they used to wear when they would come to my door.
No. Like, it's okay. You got it right. Okay. Like if they're circumcised
caught her on
or not.
cut.
I was like, who are the people that come to knock on the door in the khakis? That's where my brain went. Clearly.
Apparently they were slim fit khakis.
Yeah. Oh, well then they didn't have pleats.
Oh man.
No, it was like me and a bunch of female comics. Like ever since then, we've all just been like, this guy's name. Like, remember the khakis?
Aw, that's really unfortunate.
I want to take this moment to get a little.
Good.
I want to get confessional right now.
What?
There is a single photo on Facebook and Instagram of me some point within the last year in skinny fit khakis.
Oh boy.
And I have
Why?
I just was like, had a business trip and I didn't have like laundry and I was like short.
I think I know that picture.
Yeah. I literally just got them quick and I was like working out a ton at that point.
That work situation is a little bit different. You're not like on stage as a comedian. You're in like an office setting where you have to dress
in an
up
office.
A little bit.
That's all right?
That's not weird.
B's like, it is not. She's like, offices and day jobs are for fucking chunks.
Whoa. I mean,
you've actually said that before.
Well, I mean, I don't. It's like not wrong though.
So you don't have a day job?
I don't work. I am independently wealthy because everyone I love is dead.
Oh, at first I was like, that's awesome, and then I was like, that is not awesome.
No.
Oh.
It's like I've talked about this on another podcast, but not on mine, but I got a lot of money like real young.
Yeah.
And I used to work and then I had like a mental breakdown and now I don't work.
Yeah.
So it's like I've always been like a psycho. Like I'll like give people money, like large amounts of money, and it turns out bad because then a lot of people are like, oh, she's just like giving money away, and then they want to like take advantage.
Latch on.
Well, yeah, and like a lot of people are just like they'll go out with me and they just like expect me to pick up the tab, and like I will a lot, you know, because I don't care about money, but then I don't like the way that it makes people treat me, you know.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't have to work because I don't, you know.
Yeah. Man.
But also it's like I like to tell people, I say this on my podcast a lot, it's like, you want to trade places with me? Cool. Everyone you love is dead.
Yeah.
Now that's
hard.
You know, like now you're set.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Well, I mean, even my mother and I have a very complicated relationship, or had, you know, and like when she died, I hadn't seen her in 2 years, but like that death was like devastating.
Oh, I'm sure. You're lucky you have had a reasonably normal life, Jenna.
You know what? you know, I have. I say that all the time. I think I said that when I had to put Cooper down. I had another dog.
I know. I'm
it was
so sorry.
Very sad.
I know.
But what was interesting was like I realized like that was the first time I've had to, which sounds so ridiculous sitting in this room, but with you too. But like only real loss I've like as you know, divorce and like jobs and like that it all hit at the same time. A couple of years ago was a really shitty year. But in the grand scheme of things, right? It's like there hasn't been like major. I've been really lucky that way to not have like major loss yet. And so that was like my first experience with it. So like I can't even imagine like listening to some of your stories. I can't even like wrap my head around that. And honestly, how I would survive through something like that because I've never had to, thankfully.
You're definitely lucky.
Very lucky. I know.
This is how you do it. You just cry all the time.
Oh.
No, I just I just cry all the time. That's it.
Well,
you know,
that seems like a healthy response though.
I'm a crier too.
You know? Oh, he is a crier. He used to get mad at me because I would joke around about it. He'd be like, you stop saying that. And I was like, I'm sorry.
I mean, I am a crier. Like it's a problem for some people in my life.
It is. It makes people uncomfortable, and I don't want anyone to feel that way. But then it's like, what? Like I spend so much time like holding it in, and then there are points, you know, when it's just like when we're really like directly talking about like, oh yeah, they're actually all dead. Then I'm like, fuck, I can't, you know,
right?
I just can't. My face leaks. That's how I put it.
Do you do you do therapy?
Yeah. I mean, not traditional. Like I've been in therapy since I was 16, you know, and my dad died when I was 17. And I just feel like the angel of death, you know?
Yeah.
Like I've almost only consistently dealt with like really serious traumatic loss. And so it's like, you'd almost think I would be like better at it at this point, but
I don't know if that's,
I went to treatment over the summer, for 3 months. I was in like grief, depression treatment in California.
Yep.
And I did this thing called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, where they like it's basically like an MRI for your brain, and they like zap the sadness out of you. Like
they do.
It's like electroshock therapy, but make it modern, you know.
Oh.
And it's for people with like traumatic brain injuries and treatment resistant depression, because I don't take any medication, like opiates or what do you call that? Like psych meds. I don't take any psych meds anymore. And it's like harder when you're left-handed because the way that your brain is set up. So it's like they had to like take longer to get it all like mapped out. And then about a week before my treatment was finished, my grandmother died.
Oh, they were like, we were doing so well.
I know, I was doing well. And then I've just been a mess ever since then. And so I was supposed to start this other, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't be, you're fine.
I was supposed to start this other, like treatment program in the beginning of January. And I just like, honestly, I was like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't want to because you need a break. Yeah. Or you just don't think it'll help.
No, I just am so sick of fucking treatment. You know, it's like, it's not that it doesn't help, but it's like, I don't want to talk about my feelings anymore. Right. Like, I don't want to do this all day, you know? Yeah. I just want to like, honestly, I just want to like take drugs and dance.
But then how do you heal if you don't talk about it, right? Like,
drugs and dance.
Well, I mean, in a healthy way.
It's not like a full healing, but you'll feel healed.
Maybe in a healthy way.
Like how do you get on Somali and masturbate to the color blue? Sounds cool to me. Fuck.
I mean, that doesn't sound terrible. I just mean like
I have a different plan. I think that how I'm healing and how I think the best way for people to heal and what I hope that I can eventually become an example for is just like make art, you know?
Well, the thing is you are talking about it. You're just not talking about it with a therapist. You're telling your story, which is probably healing.
Well, and I talk to a lot of like people online. Like I spend a lot of my day on the phone communicating with people who are listening to the podcast and who are telling me their stories. And then they just want to talk like they feel like we're best friends. And I'm like, yeah, like I'll jump right into it and be like, you've known me my whole life. Let's talk about what hurts.
Yeah.
You know? So it is like it is not traditional therapy. So it is kind of like I'm in therapy, but it's like the weirdest, you know, crowdsourced therapy you could ever get.
It's like a support group almost.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And
sometimes
I mean,
have moments.
honestly, although it is super non-traditional, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of valuable things that does for you and the way it makes you feel and the kind of fulfillment you get from connecting with a person, being able to both share your story, but also I know it's not always healthy to be constantly taking on the load of other people, but sometimes like being that bridge and kind of helping people get through stuff, it's immensely valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, people are really great to me though. They send me like care packages, like they give me like they give me like concert tickets for free. Like girls send me like crystals or they like make stuff and they send it to me. And like people give me free drugs sometimes. I mean, I give free drugs for iTunes reviews. Shout out. But, like if you listen to all my episodes and you write a review on iTunes, I'll give you a hit of acid. Real talk. But other people.
She's not kidding.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. If the FBI is listening, I am
totally kidding. Totally joking.
But if you're just like a regular person, I'm not kidding. But so it's just like it's so like crazy, like the level of connection that I get with people who feel so close to me and like who I feel so close to and who show me so much like love and kindness and support. Like you, like I mean, telling 40 people about some fucking nobody's podcast, like that's how podcasts get big, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I mean,
because I cried though.
I feel like I had a question. You were saying something and then I just lost it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Not you.
Oh,
okay.
Let's see. What else?
Want to hit this again? Yours is bad. Mine's good.
No, I got it working good now. You just got to do it for longer.
Okay.
Shit talker.
Yeah. I mean,
It's better that time.
longer is better. Maybe your battery's too small.
It might be.
Sometimes I will put a cart on a battery and it's like, this is not a good fit, you know, just like dating.
Yes.
That's
just like dating.
Something so profound.
honestly, that was pretty profound. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have like a serious question.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Go ahead.
Love it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to your earlier childhood, and I can't stress enough how much you guys should listen to that first episode so that you can kind of
that
hear
first
a little
episode
bit.
Of That Time I Got Arrested podcast.
I'm like, have we not said it? I'm like, what? Anyway, what I'm curious about is, and you don't have to go into it, but like, were your parents around a lot when you were younger? Because I'm thinking of like attachment styles and sort of how this plays out in your life.
Fuck no.
So I'm wondering, yeah. So if they weren't around, like, how it's interesting that were you really close with your grandparents instead? Or?
So, fuck, dude. My early childhood, like 0 to 5, my Cuban grandmother exclusively took care of me. So my first language was Spanish.
Cool.
And I just like pretty much only chilled with her and like we were homies and she was the best. And so like 0 to 5, like I was fine. Because like I had this lady who like really, really cared about me and looked out for me so well. She died when I was 16. And then when I was 5, then my dad went to jail and my whole life got turned upside down. So I ended up living on a boat for 3 years. And then I like moved literally every year. I would either be in Miami or Chicago or California. So I never spent 2 years in one place until I was in high school. And then I was alone.
When you, before high school though, after your dad went to jail, were you with your mother?
I was with a combination of people. So it was like my grandparents on my mother's side, my grandparents on my father's side, my dad's sister. When I was with my mother was like like a pretty bad, like evil person in general. And I'm like comfortable saying that because the shit she did to me, like looking back, is like so fucked up that you'd like do this to a child. But my mom would literally like leave me at strangers' houses for weeks. My mom would like leave me at home alone when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old for months. My mom disappeared for 3 months once when I was 10.
Wow.
And I like ran out of food and like stopped going to school. And it wasn't until the school like called the police and they eventually got a hold of my grandparents, who eventually came out to California, who like found me in this townhouse that I'd been alone in for 3 months. That was like, so it was like my childhood was like scary, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, for attachment styles, like what's the most fucked up you can be? That's me.
Same girl. Same.
Well, do you find yourself gravitating towards people who are, I feel like I'm going to quote this incorrectly, but like, it's like anxious people go to like avoidant people. I don't know, whatever. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. The point is
we are
you
so fucking
as
precise.
as like a, you know, you might crave stability, or do you think that you crave sort of that
chaos?
Yeah.
So I think all of my like, and why I've realized that I'm not like suitable for romantic relationships at this juncture in my life is that I have tried to replace that sort of like feeling of like love and comfort and security that you get from a parent with like a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
And that is not sustainable and not healthy. And like I've done that repeatedly with disastrous results, you know, to the point where it's just like I can't fucking date people. And like the last relationship that I was in, which lasted like maybe like a month, and it was over the summer, and it was so fucked up. Like that person was so fucked up. I had to really take a moment and be like, this is what I'm attracting into my life because I have not gotten over, you know, like not having parents, and like I'm not over it. And until I'm over it or like I'm comfortable with it, then I don't think I can really like accept healthy love, you know? So that's why I just have anonymous sex slide into my DMs. No, I'm just kidding.
But like not kidding.
I mean,
you have to fit a certain level of criteria, but like if you fit it, like hit me up.
it's weird right now. I feel like instead of just like listening to you, it's like I'm looking at a mirror and I hear a female voice.
I know. Well, did you see me look at you earlier?
No, even when, I mean, like literally that entire last thing you said.
Do you feel seen?
Like when you cut, like
me.
I know you're going to cut this off, but I looked at you when she said the thing about leaving you with.
Cutting back into where I will actually leave this in. The things that are formative, the things that are formative about me that like, I mean, clearly anybody who listens to this podcast, yes, I am a piece of shit. No, just kidding. But I am like broken and damaged and totally, and all the things that people might hear.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. I think all the people that listen to this and they're like, oh man, this dude, what a fucking piece of work. And it's like, no, I'm just like anybody else had some shit and they're very formative things. And of course that's going to like impact your relationships, impact the way you see relationships.
Yeah.
So
yes,
I mean, like how else are you going to be? Right. I mean, like you said, until you get to a point where you're like, exactly.
But how do you get to a healthy point then?
You really, it's
great
like,
question.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the pivot we were trying to make here is it's like, you said until you get to a point where you feel like you're in a better spot that you don't think that you could have like a healthy relationship. And honestly, I mean, I've felt like that so many times and you go through phases of healing, obviously, and maybe you'll hit a time where you think, oh yeah, like I'm better. I've got a handle on this. I'm going to put myself out there, expose myself in some way after having your walls up. And then somebody stomps on you or manipulates you or is like a narcissistic sociopath. And then the work that you've done that you think you're like, oh, I'm in this great place. And suddenly you're just like a blubbering fucking wreck again, and you're like starting from scratch because some new person just like destroyed you.
Well, there wasn't much left to begin with, but I do think that it is challenging because it's like, how do you stop dating? You know? Yeah. It's like you have to stop being a person, you know, and then it's like you stop like making meaningful connections with people. I mean, I guess if you grow up with like a disordered home, then like your idea of like love is disordered, so then it's harder to like forge like healthy relationships with anyone, like friendships, romantic, you know, even like coworkers, you know? For sure. So like I get into so much trouble because I'm just like so fucked up.
Well, and I think people that come from that, they tend to go to one extreme or the other. Either they struggle to make meaningful connections of any kind, or they so easily make what superficially seems to be a meaningful connection with everyone.
Yeah.
And like, I'm definitely that dude.
Same.
Like, I love people. Like, shout out to my friend Robin. She's like one of my best friends. She says like my defining trait is that I like love. But I know that's just because that's like the way I'm broken, is like, oh, I'm going to like love everybody and give some of myself to everybody and be something to everybody. And that will fill this being like nothing to nobody that was like the first 18 years of my life.
But then the people on the receiving end of that probably feel as if there's not enough love, right? Because if you treat everyone equally, what makes me so special?
You're not special.
Right? I don't mean me, but I'm saying
no, you're really not special. Just kidding. I love you.
I mean the people that you date, right? Like I would have to say like someone on the receiving end of that would probably, myself, would feel like, well, he treats these people just the way he treats me. What makes me so special? Like, why am I not a bigger part of his life?
Oh my God.
Right? Like that is something that
I've been in that relationship, like with someone where it was like they were so drawn to me because they're like, you're so open. You give me so much of yourself. And then like we dated for like a year, and throughout the year, he was like, oh, you're like this with everyone. Like this isn't special.
It cheapens it a bit.
Yeah. And it became like a big insecurity of his, and it made me resent him because I'm like, I thought you loved this about me. Yeah. You know, and it's like, why can't I have these relationships, like these kinds of relationships with other people? But he really, and like what's fucked up is like that was the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, where someone who is like cognizant of like my trauma, even if he didn't understand it. You know?
Right.
I wouldn't break up with someone over that, but I would have that conversation and be like, this is the way this makes me feel. Like, am I off base here? Because maybe he didn't understand, right? Like,
or maybe he was just really insecure.
Maybe he was just insecure,
you know. But we're all insecure.
We are. Oh my God!
And it's like our job to like help other people, not necessarily overcome, but become more comfortable with their insecurities. Because if we're all experiencing the same thing, then why can't we just be like, it's okay?
Yeah, this is so normal.
Yeah. Well, because
just like sneezing or like coughing, it's like we get sick sometimes, and like then we get better, and it's fine.
Well, it's funny that you say that because it is so normal, and I think when people aren't open about who they are and what they've been through. Like, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, like, if I were a guy, I would totally like date you in a heartbeat. I wouldn't be scared of it, but I'm also not a guy. I'm a woman.
Are
so
you
as
trying
a woman,
to date me?
maybe we did say I was gonna go girl. But like,
you said you were ready for
I know. There's always the first
ladies,
time for
quit
everything.
scissoring. God.
But I feel like maybe because I am a woman and I can like understand. I don't know if I don't know, men might not. Whatever, have the capacity to do that. But they
don't have the capacity for much, to be honest.
Fair. That's fair. I always say, like, I'm the kind of person who says, talk to me about your relationship, like on a first date.
Same.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I think that actually makes me learn a lot more about you than like, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Who gives a fuck? Like,
no, I want to know who broke you and why.
I want to know. Exactly. Exactly. But also like how you dealt with it, right?
Yeah.
My therapist will say things like, okay, Jenna, first of all, no more long distance relationships. That's A. B, these were the lessons I learned last time. She's like, number 2, she's like, you are, what I want you to know is everyone's got their shit, right? Like everyone's got baggage. Like she's like, you can date someone who has kids with an ex-wife who's crazy. You can date someone who's sick, maybe, right? And like undergoing treatment for something. Don't care. She was like, everyone's got shit. She's like, what I want you to concentrate on is those people, how they're dealing with it and if they're dealing with it. So if they're looking, because I'm a fixer. And so if they're looking for you to fix their problem and not taking like ownership of it, that's when you leave. She was like, but if someone is self-aware enough to own their shit and try to work on it, then she's like, you can date them, which I think is a very good point. I feel like, you know, we all kind of have our shit, but I think it's like how you deal with it. And I feel like you are dealing with it in your own way. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I don't think that that's such a terrible thing. Like if you own it and you're trying to deal with it and you're trying to make it better, it's okay. So I don't think that like you said, I think people need to normalize some of the like craziness that is life, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, why is that so bad to like show people who you are?
They'll be like, it's okay not to be okay. Like, that's like a big like statement that people make to be like mental health awareness, like blah, 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 you know?
Right.
But then it's like when you're actually acting crazy, people are like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
You know, and it's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Everything. The world is on fire.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's true. I guess that's a good point. It's like, in theory, we know that something's crazy, right? But then when you actually see it, it might be a very different thing. Like you can rationalize in your head that you could handle it, but then maybe in implementing it, maybe you can't. I don't know.
How long do you think we have until the apocalypse? Real talk.
Oh, I don't know.
Guys, it just got deep.
I don't know.
Apocalypse
I got to
talk.
be honest with you. People ask me this, and I'm always like, I mean, I don't even care. Because the thing is,
Wait.
the
People
thing
ask
is-
you this? People frequently, Jenna,
yeah,
how
no,
close do you
I've
think
been-
we are to the apocalypse?
Well, they'll say it like, do you believe in it? Do you think it's going to happen? When is it going to happen? What are you going to do? And I was like, I don't care. If it happens, I want to die because I don't want to live like that. I don't just
I
let me go.
wanna live like
I don't want to
that.
have to riot. I don't want to have to like try to survive. Bye. Goodbye.
Do you have like a suicide plan?
No. Do I need one?
I mean, if the world is burning and then like everyone's going to come kill you or like rape you, like what are you going to do?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'd probably rather take it into my own hands.
Yeah.
No, I should
Nice little
stockpile
heroin
those drugs.
overdose, you know?
I've never done heroin.
Exactly.
it could be a really warm. It could be a real warm, happy death.
Exactly.
I'll just come to
You-
your
you-
house
you will
and
be-
be like knocking on your door. I'm like, can you help me with this?
You will be cool as a cucumber until you are not.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good, solid. I didn't even think of that. Shit.
Although I will
I don't
say
even
my
know, like, a
knowledge
gun.
my knowledge of heroin usage is limited to the scene in Pulp Fiction where John Travolta's like driving after he does the heroin and he's just like kind of tripping out and like eyes rolling back in his head, and that's really the extent of my heroin knowledge. It's pretty limited.
Well, maybe you might want to get on that because are you someone who would try to survive?
You're goddamn right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck
Oh,
it.
I wanna survive.
And from what you said about dying, I'm ready. Like,
Yeah.
I would rather be there than here and having to survive.
Even in the apocalypse, being like, there's going to be privilege a little bit, and being a dude's going to be better than being a woman.
Yeah.
oh, well, that's true. Always.
So true. Always.
What's
I mean,
different
guys,
than now?
I mean, I say topple the patriarchy, and as we stand now in civilized society, I assure you that I am first and foremost an ally. If it gets to the apocalypse,
all bets are
it's
off.
out the fucking window.
You're not
Wow.
an ally?
I'm kidding.
Like women are going to die?
No, I'm saying
You
like
would like rape and pillage?
no. There will be. I'm very anti-raping, anti-pillaging.
good.
To
That's
be
good.
to be
Okay.
clear.
Well, I'm just asking.
I'm just saying. Like,
we had to clarify.
Yeah. I'm just kidding.
I feel like this
no,
joke
I'm
fell
totally
flat.
kidding. No, I'm kidding. Well, what does that mean? That like you just like you'd protect all the women, but
Yeah,
you would be in
for sure.
power.
No, he's
You'd be
not
in
an ally though.
Well, he
No,
would be
I mean,
in
I
power,
would, I
and he would
would.
hold them down. But while he was holding them down, he would protect them. I'm using air quotes. People can't see.
What
me.
are you holding people
I think it's more
down?
like
don't-
martial
'cause
law, like every man for
That's
themselves.
kind of where I was
Yeah.
going, man.
Well.
Thanks. You know, you see the real me.
What was
B.
that show? Did you guys ever watch that show? Revolution? No, is that what it was called?
The
Can
End
you
of the
Google
World?
it? I don't think so. I think it was called Revolution. Oh, I might have made that up. Maybe it was called End of the
you
World.
make a lot of things up.
But when you Google it, it basically the premise is something with like the government. They shut down the power, and then like everyone had to like restart over.
Then we're fucked.
Revolution is an
fucked.
American
Revolution.
post-apocalyptic science fiction television
That was
show.
it, and it was really good. They shut it. They took it off the air, which was kind of a bummer. But it was so interesting to watch it and like how like society started over and what that looked like. And boof, I don't want to live through that. I'm good.
What happened to the Mayans?
When society
Fair.
gets wiped off, I hope there's still a source of electricity so you guys can still listen to both Menage-A-Pod and That Time I Got Arrested, which are two of the best podcasts in Chicago.
That means the satellites still have to work too, though.
There's gonna be like some
I think that's going to
Illuminati
be the
shadow
next. I
government
think that's going
stuff.
to be the next thing to go because it's too. It's
Well, it's like, why do you think we don't have green energy already? Like a renewable source
Totally.
of energy, because they have to be able to like shut this shit
Systems
down.
of control.
You know?
yeah.
Well, also like,
population control.
well, right.
Was
and
what that show was.
when it
about.
all goes to hell, it's like all the poor people are just going to be like, fucked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, they are.
You're
Scary.
like, I'm independently wealthy. It doesn't matter. I'll be fine.
No,
No. You. I was like, me. No.
No, my family talks about this. They definitely have like a contingency plan when things like go. Like,
But that's the thing. Like, what does that even mean to you're independently wealthy? Because money's. I mean, like, it's not going to mean anything. And how are you going to get out of the bank?
In the beginning, there will be an initial period of time, I think, where shit's going crazy, where things will the loose framework of society will still be in place, and you got to make your moves then.
you can buy a silo basically that's underground, that's sustainable, that will
right.
like protect you for up to like 2 years.
But you would go mad before then. If all you have is this tiny little bunker with canned food, I would lose my shit.
No. They like have like fish and like a greenhouse and like
and cool.
They can like filter water and it's like it's like
so we're all going to your uncle's.
Is it possible?
How big is it?
Is it possible to get Pornhub down there?
Can I bring the dog?
I mean, there is like a game room and there like I've
so
seen
it's like a real house underground.
Yeah, it's a silo. It's like an old silo that's like turned. And so I have like a really big family. My mom was one of 8, and I have 27 cousins.
Holy shit!
So it's like for us, you know. Yeah. So it's like we're not gonna get lonely because there's so many.
Oh yeah, you'll be fine. You might just kill each other
potentially.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, and I guess you couldn't have animals down there because where are they gonna go bathroom?
You have a very interesting life.
I know.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I feel like people say that and they're like, "You're so damaged," and I'm like, "I know."
No, but right now,
I don't know. There's a positive spin to that.
I'm saying with so much respect and also relating to you on so many levels. And for everybody out there listening, I cannot say it enough. You should definitely follow her on Instagram. You should definitely listen to her podcast, and tell everyone again what your Instagram is and the name of your podcast.
I forget. No, I'm just kidding. It's called, the podcast is called That Time I Got Arrested. Instagram, That Time I Got Arrested, or BE_Casper. And, yeah, I'm out there.
Guys,
so good,
listen to it. Once you listen to it, if you just commit to the fucking prologue, it's like 13 minutes or something.
You don't even need it. Like, that was genius to like start it like that because I was hooked.
Yeah, just commit to the prologue. You will listen to it. It's the sound design, the engineering. Even once you switch studios,
even though he's a
like
jerk.
I know, right? Fuck that guy, but it sounded so good.
It still sounds good though. Like it's fantastic, and everyone should check it out. So guys, make sure you're doing that. And thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you both. Thank you so much. I love your show.
And thanks for the flowers.
Oh my gosh,
stellar guest.
Guys, future guests who's listening, B brought Jenna coffee and
flowers,
treats
my
for our
two favorite
dogs
things.
and flowers.
Oh, God, you're winning. You're winning the guest.
You are a goddamn delight.
Thank Gigi and her love of Emily Post and very like oppressive influence on my life.
Okay.
Okay, and B, before we go, I know we didn't touch on this much, but you are also a stand-up comedian.
I guess.
And you've got some performances coming up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
All right, I haven't done a show in fucking 2 months, but I have 3 this week. So
that's exciting.
I guess come.
Can we come see you?
Yeah.
My buddies on January 22nd. I don't know what time.
Is that the one with Dario?
Yeah. He's great. I love him. We're good friends. And also doing End of the Line at the Sedgwick stop, which is Paige Blair's show.
She was on your podcast.
Yeah, I love her. She's great.
Great Chicago comedian.
On the 25th. And then, so I just started producing this show. I'm moving into a funeral home tomorrow.
What?
And the funeral home has, because I'm dead.
Fair.
The funeral home, I feel safer there. The funeral home has an art gallery attached to it. So
cool.
It's called Parlor and Ramp. And also on the 25th. So it's like I don't do a show for fucking 2 months, and then I have 2 shows in one night. So you can catch me on the 25th twice. I'll do different material at each set.
Super stoked.
And then my buddy's on the 22nd. So come to one of those. Mostly my buddies are...
Where is my buddy? Is that in the burbs?
No, it's on Clark and Montrose, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
so it's definitely a makeable commute for anybody who lives in the city or suburbs.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely come out and
great show. Every week they do it, and like they're so dope. You've had Dario. That was the first episode I ever listened to.
Yeah, so friend of the pod,
him.
Dario Durham, and I
positive.
I was talking to someone once about the Chicago comedy scene, and I was just like talking about how much I like to lift people up and like kind of whatever. And someone was like, and we were talking about how much we both love Dario, and they said I was like the white Dario, and I was like the best fucking compliment
That's really
ever.
nice.
I know, because Dario is the fucking man.
Well, we already talked that you guys have the same foreheads.
God damn, we did.
We did. So technically, I guess so.
Fuck off.
Kidding.
All right.
Turned a compliment into a diss. I love it.
Yeah, Jenna is officially the worst.
Sorry, sometimes it happens.
All right. Well, thanks again so much for joining us,
Thank
B.
you.
Guys, if you want to find out more about Menage-A-Pod, head over to our Instagram at Menage-A-Podcast, where you'll find our link tree that includes a link to our Facebook group, Twitter account, all the other things we want you to check out. By the time this comes out, we'll have already done the speed dating event with over here in Chicago.
Yes,
so
can't wait.
Next episode, you will get an update on that. Super stoked about that. A quick thank you to everyone who makes the show happen, like Jenna, because I love you, friend.
Thanks, man.
Wonderful guests like Be Casper. Check her out. Me, I'm the best. And you guys, you all rock. Until next time, good luck out there.
Bye, guys.
Bye.